to include action since the Climate Action Plan was adopted in 21. And I see around $4 million has been allocated to climate change actions, including electric vehicle charge points and also your fleet and the Habitat Restoration Fund, etc. There are other items climate related in the budget, but I'll pass over those in any detail. I don't think, however, that the Council's budget record on climate action since this emergency declaration 3 years ago, over 3 years ago, I don't think it's more than pedestrian, so I want to press on. Climate change is becoming more of an acute reality. I want to pick a few points out of the recent reports to do with this, and I've got references for all of these. Carbon emissions, all kinds, are rising faster than for 66 million years. There is more CO2 in the atmosphere now than at any time in the last 4 million years. The temperature of the world's ocean surface has hit an all-time high since satellite records began, leading to marine heat waves around the globe, providing fuel for extreme weather. And our world is hurtling past the 1.5 degree warming limit that a livable future requires, and with present policies, it's careering towards a 2.8 degree rise. I believe Council is getting a handle on its own carbon emissions, but it can only marginally influence those from the community. Its role in local adaptation to imminent dangerous climate change is potentially, however, much more significant. Climate impacts now and here, higher temperature peaks and more frequent heat waves, and more serious and frequent flooding, often associated with more intense storms. This means for Council, and this overlaps with your responsibilities, fire prevention, building codes and passive cooling, support for the vulnerable, and emergency resilience. And under storms and flooding, emergency preparedness, drainage upgrades, coastal erosion and building codes. These challenges will be novel in intensity and I think existential in their impact. I think it's that serious. Can I turn now to my practical proposal to do with the urban forest strategy? The urban forest strategy seems to me is a very positive step, and I've got 3 reasons set out in a document I'll hand to you in a moment. But to move straight on, the final draft of the UFS was recently adopted, I believe, by the Council. The project, however, is going to languish with minimal funding under this budget. And I strongly urge the Council to fund it for 23-24. I think this is a sentiment I've seen this week expressed by a couple of councillors, so I've got some support, I think. One option I want to suggest, though, in a practical sense, is to front load and sharpen the UFS with the program I'm seeking to have adopted more fully. This project should be rejigged for earlier impact. I think its timeline regarding targets is quite unrealistic. It needs more bite. And in the action section of the UFS, you need to adopt a pilot program to implementation, selecting showcase locations within the Shire for an accelerated project rollout. I'm thinking of one major centre and a couple of smaller urban areas. This will allow Council to learn from the outcomes in sample locations, and residents across the Shire, through publicity, can learn more quickly about what can be achieved from an urban forest strategy. The pilot program should have selected higher and earlier aggregate targets. And I won't spell them out here, but they're on the paper. To reduce the financial and resources burden of a Shire-wide strategy coverage, it's suggested that the following be pursued if the UFS was given a boost only in the pilot areas to 2028. And there's several items which could be thus omitted for most of the Shire in the 5 years of intense program in the pilot zones only. But there might be selected urgent actions that the UFS prioritises that could continue Shire-wide. I'm thinking particularly of council asset management and council works programs, and also the planning approval process. These might be important to get rolling earlier.
Just about out of time, Mr.
I was about to finish.
Okay, well, I was just going to give you a little bit of liberty anyway, so that's good.
That's right. Can I have these passed around to the council? Thank you. So,
So you completed there, you're finished?
I'm finished.
Any questions, councillors?
I'd just like to thank Ken for coming in and presenting. I'll need to take time to consider your report. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ken, for coming in. I just had a question about the pilot areas. Do you have any ideas of where the pilot areas should be specifically, or is it just something that you'd leave to the council to evaluate?
Not being as familiar with the Shire's details as you would be, councillors would be. No, I just thought Cows or Wonthaggi for the major area, and maybe Granville, Bass, or possibly Inverloch, Cape Patterson for one or two others. That's all.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? David, you're right. Officers, any questions? If not, Mr. Blackman, thanks very much for your time today. As echoed by the councillors, thanks for your presentation, and we'll take that on board, and we've got further deliberations to do on the budget, and we'll be taking all of these submissions into account. So thanks very much for coming in today.
I'm very aware that money is tied from Canberra to the coast. Thank you very much.
What's that next one?
He's on.
Okay. Oh, she's there?
No, Brendan's not. So, Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Brendan Smart from the Woolamai Beach Surf Lifesaving Club. Brendan, if you'd like to start your submission.
G'day, Mayor and councillors. Thanks for having me. As you would have read in my submission, I'm applying for the council to fund storage as part of the redevelopment of the toilet block at Smiths Beach for use by the Lifesaving Club. To provide a little bit of background, we've had a Smiths Beach rescue base positioned, it's basically joined onto the disabled ramp there at Smiths Beach for approximately 4 years. At the time when that was built or designed and built, we essentially had 3 designs, 2 of which included storage in them and 1 of which didn't. Unfortunately, DECA selected the one that didn't have storage in it. For a period of time, we used storage in the toilet block facility, but since that's now closed, we're no longer using that. And so at the moment, we've got a disabled wheelchair, disabled beach matting, all our life-saving operations equipment stored in a tower that was really just designed to seat 2 or 3 lifesavers while they observe the water, and a fold-down first aid bed to treat people with first aid. It wasn't really designed to have storage in there. Additionally, we the last couple of years we've been running our community nippers program at Smiths Beach, and that's requiring a significant amount of equipment to be brought on and off site every day of the program. So in short, by at the same time as council is funding the rebuilding of the toilet block there, if they could make an additional provision for some storage for the Woolamai Beach Surf Lifesaving Club, it would essentially have 3-fold impact. It would greatly assist our lifesaving operations, keeping community members and visitors safe. It would greatly assist our community nippers program, which many local and visitors participate in, and it would greatly assist the members of the community that have a disability and use our free disability chair and beach matting that we have there, and we could store that in there. thanks for your time.
Okay, any questions? Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Any questions that councillors would like to ask? What's the size of the storage area you're seeking, Brendan?
It's in the request, but off the top of my head, it was roughly 2 metres by 3 metres. So not a large space, but large enough to, yeah, as I said, fit that disability chair, fit the disability matting, and then some minor nippers and life-saving operations equipment.
Are you aware of a projected cost?
Yes, I've also included that in the submission. To arrive, I did speak to a builder, and I also received council's budget for the rebuilding of the toilet block, and essentially using the budget for the toilet block and the square meters of the toilet block, I was able to backfill $1 per square meter, and then took a slight discount on that figure, because obviously that budget would include fixtures and fittings, and we wouldn't have any fixtures and fittings in this storage area. It would essentially just be a light and a roller door, and arrived at an estimated cost of around $20,000.
Okay, thanks very much. Any other questions? Thanks very much for your time today, and as I said earlier, we'll be taking all of the submissions into account in further discussion on the budget. So thanks very much. So next one.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, our next speaker is Deb Leonard, who is speaking on pump tracks.
Hi, Deb. We've got up to 5 minutes, and we'll allow a little bit of time at the end for some questions. So it's over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Michael. Can you all hear me? I'll go with a yes.
Yep.
So as many of you know, I've been part of the community push for a pump track in Cape Woolamai for some time, and which is coming along slowly. And I understand that a lot of people have put a lot of effort into this, but looking at the budget, so the only realistic location for a pump track in Cape Woolamai is the Woolamai Park. We've only got the one park in Cape Woolamai, so it seems like that's the obvious location. We also have in the budget an allocation of $124,000 for upgrade of the Woolamai Park. So it seems to me that the council has the opportunity here to kill two birds with one stone and combine the upgrade of the park with the installation of a pump track, or the inclusion of a pump track in that park upgrade. The equipment that is already at Cape Woolamai Park is fine. There's nothing particularly wrong with it. It just caters to very young children. It's toddler age equipment, and it would be amazing to be able to expand on that and add to that facility to include some facilities and equipment for older children, and even even adults. My husband even likes a good pump track. So what I'm asking council to do is to consider, out of that $124,000 already allocated for this location, would you consider splitting the funds, splitting off $10,000 for a design of a pump track? So all the design costs, I've spoken to a company that designs them, so it's $10,000 to $30,000 for design of the pump track, depending on how complicated it is. But in this case, pump tracks are cookie cutter designs. It's not like a mountain bike track, which has to be designed specifically for the landscape. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can quite easily find a design that's been used in another council that will fit in this area and insert into the space, and that'll be relatively cheap. I have been told that an overall cost of a pump track, I think, ranges between 150 to 200 grand. But I have been told by your own council officers at the budget consultation meetings that there are funds in the public open space contributions and in the, I think it's the strategic work funds. There's funds, plenty of funds, over $7 million of funds, 5 million of which are not allocated. So all you would need is about another 100 grand out of there. And you could upgrade the entire park make it usable for a far wider range of ages and abilities, and it really, in the scheme of things, is not going to cost the council a lot. Second alternative, my other alternative is that you could leave the funding for the Woolamai Park as is and allocate another 10 to 30 grand for a design of a pump track at a location to be determined in Cape Woolamai, given that there was over 800 people that signed a petition for a pump track in Cape Woolamai, and there's been a community reference group, or being a community reference group formed. You could allocate funds for a design at a venue to be determined, and then once that community reference group determines the location, which I, have a fair idea of where it would likely be, then you're already well on the way to do that. And my third suggestion, out of this, I think it was born out of this initial push for just a pump track in Cape Woolamai, grew this huge strategy for pump tracks, mountain bike tracks, BMX tracks all over Bass Coast, and now we're allocating 50 grand for a strategy for that, just because a few people wanted this one little thing in one location. So my suggestion.
Would you wrap it up now?
Sure thing. So if you put that aside, and if you combine the 50 grand for the strategy and the 124 grand for a park upgrade, then you've got plenty of money to provide a pump track in Cape Woolamai, and maybe the strategy can be put off to next year.
All right. I like that term, plenty of money. All right, so I'll throw it open to the councils. Any questions, Deb?
Billy?
No, it looks like you've put your case. Thanks very much for that, Deb, and we'll also consider that along with the other submissions we're receiving. Thanks very much.
No worries. Thanks, guys. See ya.
Okay, let's have submissions. Deborah Milligan.
Yeah,
You here?
Mr. Mayor, our final submitter is just joining us online.
I thought she was in person according to my list.
We have attending person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Change your plan.
Mr. Mayor, I've just received advice that she hasn't joined us, and therefore I recommend that we finalise the submissions and recommend that we close the live stream.
Is she indicated she's not joining?
She's not here. Which submission was it, Mr. Mayor?
Pioneer Bay Residents Association, Deborah Milligan. She said it in person. We just make sure she's.
It's not here.
Had someone just arrived? It says Amelia.
No.
Okay.
Is that, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, is there time? Like, she,
So-
who?
Mr. Mayor, we've just had Amelia, who I believe is Deborah Milligan, representing the Pioneer Bay Residents Association, join online. Deborah, if you're welcome to speak, can you please turn your camera on?
Sorry.
Thank you. So, Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is Deborah Milligan, Pioneer Bay Residents Association. Deborah, if you'd like to put forward your submission, you have 5 minutes to speak. You're currently on mute.
Hello?
Yeah, now we've got you.
Great, thank you. Just in regards to the proposed toilet facilities in the community centre at the park, we're just very keen on what's happening there, because it's very important for the residents and the surrounding residents, not for sort of meeting together, but also for our overall well-being. So I think it's important that we would like to get that all started, and we'd like a little bit of more information when it's all going to be starting.
Okay, do you have are you putting further information or is that it?
No, that's it. That's all I want to know. What's going to be starting and the funding that's been allocated for that. And I believe there's already funding. That's
Okay, so sorry, Deborah, you're really after information then as to what the progress and timing of those toilets are in
Yes.
the park bay. Do we have an answer to that, Ellie, or will we take that on notice?
Mr Mayor, in the draft budget, there's funding to construct stage 1 of the Pioneer Bay toilets. So that's next financial year. We'll shortly be undertaking community consultation on the design.
Okay, so Deborah, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So it is going ahead. And what about the community hall? Is that another stage?
Mr Mayor, that will form part of the consultation, but that's proposed to be stage 2 of the project, which will be funded in a future year, subject to council approval.
Oh, okay. Yep, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
All right, well, that's good. We've answered your question. So thanks very much for your time today, Deborah.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr Mayor, there are no more submissions coming to present today, so therefore we can finalise the live stream now.
Thanks. The control room doing that.
That should be.